Going to do you a video of how to make a catapult. I've been asked to do this one, so here it is. I'm going to make a natural catapult out of this forked branch, which that's a bit of ash, I believe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do all the noisy bits first, because time's getting on. It's quite late. Well, it's got dark. I don't want to upset the neighbours. I'm doing it in the garage. I'm going to do any of the noisy bits first. So I want to just move this and put this on the ground. I'm going to use this axe to shape this handle up a bit, because that's a bit thick at the minute. Well, there's a bit of a massive knot there. That's slightly better. Now if you get a fork which is slightly narrower, you won't have to do so much work like this. You could probably just do it with a knife. Well, that's, the handle's probably alright on that now. So now what I'm going to do is use the knife to debark it and shape it a bit more. You don't have to completely debark a natural catapult. I've seen plenty of people do it and leave the bark on. And that's a pretty good way of doing it, because less work and it'll be like a natural camouflage colour to it. But as these forks, the fork on this is quite fat, I'm going to debark most of it. and this fork is a lot thinner than this one. So if I just slightly debark this one, this will probably be ready to go. But I'm going to have to thin this one down a bit. You see it's gradually getting there. I'll try to hold it first for a bit. Now what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and do this catapult without having to sand it. So I'm just going to try and cut it all with a knife. Right, so that's nearly there. And what I'm going to do next is cut this handle shorter and cut these forks a bit shorter as well. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold it here and then just mark it with the saw. And that's where I'm going to cut it. And then I'm going to cut these two forks down slightly shorter. Just done 2 marks there and there. Now it feels to me as though here and here seems a bit fat, so I'm just going to try and shave a bit of wood off there, but that's just personal preference. I was just looking because there's blood on it, but I can't see from where. There's no cut, it's weird. Well, as I've nearly got all the bark off, I might as well just finish it off now. There's only a little bit on here. Now I'm going to very lightly shave it and hope that I don't need to sand this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to round off the ends, round off the bottom, just using the knife. To be honest, that'll probably do for the bottom. And you want to make sure these are smooth, with no sharp edges, so don't dig into your bands and cut them, make them snap. You don't want no splinters or anything, so if you are going to sand anything, probably definitely wise to sand the ends if you have to. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold it in my hand and see what it feels like. Well, I'll be holding this in my left hand, drawing with the right. Well, that feels the good side to me. So I just have to remember that when I band this, I want the bands coming from here over to the back. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut some little notches in here. Now it depends if you're doing double or single bands, if you want to do the notches all the way around or just one side or back and front. This is going to be a single band catapult, so I reckon I should be alright just doing it one side. I've got a bit of sandpaper. I'm just going to sand the ends at the very least. I'll show you why I've got these gloves on in a minute. I'm just sanding the tips mainly. And I'm going to get right in these grooves. Make sure all this is smooth. That'll do for now. Right, the reason I got the gloves is because I'm going to coat this in a really simple way of doing this. You can varnish this, do whatever you want. If you want something ultra quick, bit of cooking oil. To be honest, sometimes it's better doing this without gloves. That changes it. You could do this with a rag if you've got a rag that won't come apart, or you know, it gets all threads, strands coming off it. Right, so that's that essentially done. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this in a warm place to dry, and while that's drying we're going to make the rest of it. We're going to make the band set. Well, the next thing I'm going to do, I wouldn't necessarily do all this in this order, is I'm going to punch the holes in the leather pouch. The reason I'm going to do this now, because like I said, time's getting on, and I just want to do this video for you tonight. I don't want to upset the neighbours by doing constant banging and stuff. So this bit of leather is just under 4 inches long by about 1 inch wide. Now there's loads of different ways of doing your pouches. People do ultra small ones, bigger ones. Smaller the better, but I just found this is how I do them. Works for me. They give me plenty to hold on to. Right, so I'm going to punch the holes first, and if we need to shape it, we can shape it afterwards. I'm just judging this. So I'm going to leave each side of it about 6 mil. And then we can trim this up as we want to afterwards. A better hammer than that. It's not wise to do it with an axe, probably better to do it with a nice heavy hammer. So that's the holes done. Now we can shape this to however we want it. So it'll probably end up slightly smaller than what I said it was in the first place. So first of all, I'm going to cut the corners off. This gives you a good idea of how you can kind of get it. Then I'm going to cut this down by about 1 mil at the front there. I'm probably going to leave that like that now. And what you could do, you could bring these sides in a bit to make the whole thing thinner. All depends kind of how you like your pouches, but I'm probably going to leave that like that. Some people might regard that as quite a big pouch, but you can always thin it down later. Try it, and if you think it's too heavy, make it lighter. Now the hole I used to punch them, if I can find the punch again, was, it's probably not far off 9 mil, either 8 or 9 mil, and I found an alternative. If you can't get a hole punch but you've got empty bullet cases sat around, I have done this before with empty bullet cases, just by putting them on and hammering them on. They don't last long and eventually they'll bend up on the ends, but that's another idea you could use. And another thing is what I forgot to say earlier on, is that bit of wood, the fork what I had, now that has already seasoned and dried. I've had that drying for months and months, maybe 6-7 months, and obviously some people's not going to want to wait that long. So the best thing to do, or not the best thing, but an idea what you can do is get your fork, keep the handle long and the forks long, but have it just long enough that it'll fit in the microwave on a microwave plate. I've done it, it does work. Put it in there for about 1 minute and then stop, and if you go straight up to it and listen, you'll hear it sizzling and making kind of sizzling noises. It'll make sizzling noises. So once the sizzling, well, just listen and you'll hear the sizzling, and that's like the water boiling up inside it. Let that cool down a bit, then put it in the microwave for 1 minute again, check it, listen for the sizzling, and then you keep going, letting it like 1 minute in the microwave or 2 minutes, let it cool down, do it again, let it cool down, and eventually you'll notice that it stops sizzling and steaming. And then once that gets to that point, it's dry then. So now I'm going to make the bands. I'm only going to put single ones on this, but all you do is just double this if you was going to do double bands. First of all, I'm just going to cut off 4 little bits about 5 mil long with a rotary cutter, and this is going to be for the ties. It's best to have a sharp rotary cutter. Sharper you can get it, the better. This one ain't ideal, it's not very sharp. Four of those, and that's going to be the ties. You may not need this much. You can cut off what you don't need. Right. Now I've got an old band I've done before. I'm just going to measure this. Overall it is, let's say, 10 inches long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this off at 10 inches because I'm only going to make 2 bands. If I'm going to carry on making them at 10 inches, it won't matter. Now this old band I've got is 2.5 centimetres wide. So for these are centimetres, just double check that. You can always use this, what's on your cutting mat. These are just going to be straight cut ones. Some people taper their bands. I'm just going to do it straight cut. Two bands, pouch, and 4 ties. I may actually thin this down a bit. Because looking at it now, it looks a bit fat. Especially if I'm just having single bands. That's a bit narrower now. More like the same width as the bands. Right, we'll sort this out, tie these on in a minute, and I'll double check that the catapult's dried. The oil on the catapult is dried now, so now I'm going to put the bands on. So all you'll need extra is a small bit of string. You can always tie a knot in this, so you've got like a loop of string. So that's the way I want it. Right, this is my method. There's loads of different methods to do this. So I'm going to lay that on there, about 1 inch overlap. Take one of these ties, say wrap it round 3 times, and get this bit of string. And lay it over the top, and then bind over the top of it. And then you get, I'll zoom in on the next one so you can see properly. You get this bit, put it through the loop, and then you pull your bit of string out, and it tucks it underneath. I'll zoom in on this one, show you it again on the other side. So lay that on, get your tie. That's about 1 inch. Start wrapping it round. Then get this, lay that on top there, and then bind over the top of it. And then get the end, put that through, and pull this one, and it pulls it out and under. Then just trim these off a bit. Now the pouch end, fold it over, place it in there, better zoom out a bit so you can see. Probably don't need so much on these, so I'm going to cut one of these in half. I'll wrap it around a few times. I'm going to get that bit of string again. Lay it on top, bind over the string a couple of times, because the more you do this, harder it's just going to be to pull this one through especially. Put that through the binding, through the bit of string, and then pull this down. just going to trim that off there, and I'm also going to trim this hanging off bit down as well. And then the same to the other side. I'm just going to hold this here and see if it seems about right. Seems about right there. So wrap a few times. Place a bit of string there. Wrap over the top of it 2 or 3 times. Place it in there. And pull that through. It's a lot harder pulling it through on the band, on the pouch end, than it is on the actual on the fork end. And I'm just going to trim that down a bit. And essentially, that is the catapult done. Any of these bits you want to trim off, just trim them down. Probably better doing this with a pair of scissors than it is with a knife. I'll give it a go in a minute. That is essentially it. Right, I've got 9.5 steel balls. You can't really see it. Oh, I am quite close. I don't know, 10 foot. I can't do it outside because it's pitch black at the minute. Well, that's how to make a nice, simple, easy catapult. single bands. If you want to do it double bands, obviously you just do it exactly the same but with 2 sets of bands. But I always found, for me personally, single bands I can be a lot more accurate with it. But then again, I suppose that's just practice. So you could always practice, target practice with the singles, and then once you get good at that, maybe go on to doubles. A nice simple ash fork catapult with single bands, leather pouch. Right, well cheers for watching, and I'll see you later.